That's the deal, huh? Trade-off of NATO forces.
Hello, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and along with me is our co-host, Leland Faegre. And Leland, I guess the biggest news this morning would be the Democratic primary in New Hampshire.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay.
And the fallout therefrom. We were told earlier on Monday that, lo and behold, Bloomberg had a couple of write-in votes from the three towns that Dixie Gulch and two others.
Dixville Notch.
Dixville Notch, okay. Yeah. That have the early primaries, but then we didn't hear anything more on that. But we did see Klobuchar caught a couple of votes, and she must have really, kicked it in the CNN debate that they refused to let Tulsi Gabbard into.
Well, she snubbed socialism.
She did?
I
didn't see it. Is it?
I didn't see it. I just saw the clip. But the net effect is, I think, as Biden has imploded, she's getting his votes. And so that middle, whatever that middle is, in that party,
the moderates
have vacated the Biden train, and they find her to be the least offensive, because there is no enthusiasm in that contest.
Yeah.
Did you see the numbers?
I know they were down. Once again, they were down. Now, the Democrats are saying that's because of anybody that's blue syndrome that they have. That
they'll make
they're going to come out in the main election.
They'll make any kind of excuse to explain it away. But the reality is that 11% of the Biden vote, the Sanders vote, the Bernie vote, was 18 to 29-year-olds. Only 11%. So the remainder of his numbers come from those older than 29.
Yes.
So effectively, the majority of the people of New Hampshire that voted for Bernie Sanders are socialists of 30 years or above, effectively. Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the implications here are quite extraordinary, because it suggests that the education that at least in New Hampshire, and you'd have to extrapolate from that the entire country has been receiving for several generations, is in fact a socialist
taking hold,
a socialist manifestation.
Yeah, that's a shame.
It's really, really. I can't imagine the future.
Right. And it was just beginning when I was that age. I mean,
it was there, but not.
It really accelerated after 1965, I think, the whole takeover of the socialists. But so I have a nephew in Southern California that, he's constantly, he's graduated now, but he constantly told me about the, the implied propaganda or outright propaganda that he gets, and he was constantly fighting against it. But that's the thing. Get your kids out of the public school. Anybody that's for school choice,
that is job one.
My votes. Yeah,
and that's why the Republican Party is smart to raise the profile of that platform.
Right.
It's very important that we get our children out of that environment, because they're, as Marc said, when you remember in the manifesto, he says, "Do you accuse us of experimenting with your children?" And he answered his own question. He says, "To that question, we plead guilty."
Yes. Yeah, and the fact the Republicans, unfortunately, they dropped the ball here in Nevada, because they had a special session of the legislature, and they, instead of really tackling school choice and the problem with the funding of school choice, they deferred to Sheldon Adelson and gave him spent the whole session giving him a room tax for the Raiders move into Las Vegas. Yeah. And then naturally they lost the next election. They had the majority and throughout the Nevada Assembly, the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, and they blew it as far as that goes, because we still have some vestige of school choice with the scholarship program, but that will be under attack as long as it exists as well.
Well, I'm going to get on the horn to see if we can get Jim Wheeler in here.
Yeah.
Maybe by the caucus, in time for the caucus.
All right.
What do you think?
Yeah, that if we can, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, he'll be our eyes on what's actually going on in the state. So.
All right, and then what else can we take out of it? Well, Yang, who had some libertarian impulses, like he resisted Medicare for all, he resisted, he thought that, Americans by and large don't want government jobs. His minimum payment to replace some parts of welfare was an interesting idea that some people have been kicking around.
The guaranteed annual wage?
Yeah.
That first came to my attention when I was right out of high school.
Right.
That's how long that's been around.
Yeah. Milton Friedman or somebody before him?
No, it was just technocrat nonsense,
Yeah.
They saw it coming. I mean, they could see where it was going, but...
I was surprised Tom Steyer quit because he's a billionaire.
Yeah, but it is embarrassing for some of these people to stay in there and not see any kind of growth in his platform and acceptance for, his version of socialism. His version of anti-Trump. Mm-hmm. It's basically just whose version of anti-Trump do you want? And that just isn't going to happen. Do you know that Trump received over 118,000 votes, I think, in
the Republican side,
and that's more than any incumbent Republican in the modern era. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that includes Ronald Reagan, and even if you go to Barack Obama, in his incumbent effort, that was also about more than twice what Barack Obama got. So, it's really going to be tough for the Democrats to put this thing on the stove.
Right. And our favorite Tulsi Gabbard, she's vowing to stay in. I don't know how much money she has and whether she can stay in very long. But, with her, it's her mission, and it's...
and you have to admire her for that.
Yeah.
By the way, did she have an exchange with Ron Paul?
Yes, on the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, you can see an interview with her.
Let's talk about that in the next segment. I see we're running out of time in this one, but with that, I would love, because I didn't catch that myself.
Yes,
so that's something we should definitely explore. Don't go away.
Businesses, writers, check this out. Go to lrpnv.com to get your printing, publishing.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. And we were mentioning Tulsi Gabbard, and unfortunately, I was hoping that the fact that New Hampshire is an open primary, she could get above 5%, but instead she got the respectable libertarian 3% of the vote.
Yeah, right. That's usually what we get, isn't it?
Yes.
We're lucky to get more than that.
Yes. But I also said that she had a very interesting or very nice, to my mind, I was really touched by it, interview with Ron Paul, former Congressman Ron Paul, on his Peace and Prosperity YouTube channel. And, there was just a real sense of camaraderie that you have, like an older generation passing the baton to a younger generation as far as the peace movement. Mm-hmm. And, Ron said, we certainly agree with everything you say. The fact that you were neutral and refused to join in the partisan impeachment is a plus for us. And the fact that, you are the only one that is speaking the truth about our never-ending wars. And Ron Paul reminisced about his stands that he took and how he was always all alone in the Congress. And Tulsi was very...
No one ever went into his office.
Yeah.
No one ever showed up.
Yeah. Well, he did have that Freedom Caucus meetings every week with, and he was friends with Kucinich,
right?
Who is friends with Tulsi and has endorsed Tulsi. There's YouTubes of the two of them out there too, and but Tulsi was just so warm and accepting of Congressman Paul that she's just a genuine person.
Mm-hmm.
When you get down to it, I mean She doesn't have any pretenses that I can see at all, really. She may be wrong on some things. I don't agree with her ecological extremism at times when she says it. And
she was a Bernie supporter in the last election.
Yeah, sure.
It's hard to...
She's still a Bernie supporter,
yeah.
And that, as far as that goes, if Bernie's attacked, she speaks out for him. And her Medicare for All, she did distinguish that it's to the left of Buttigieg's, and that Buttigieg wants a public option, so that you would have private insurance, but you could have opt into a Medicare for All plan of some kind. And she's saying the opposite. She's basing hers, she said, loosely on the Australian model, where you are guaranteed a public health care, but you can opt into the private sector, and many do in Australia, as far as I understand. So, I mean, we can quibble about those things, but as Congressman Paul said, we have to find common ground with real progressives who are really going to, do something to stop the endless wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you can't find them anymore.
I know, they're getting rarer.
They're not over on that side.
No, that's not where the shekels are, right?
Yeah.
Or the power.
And I think that's another example of the transformation of the electoral landscape.
Right.
This is what Trump is accomplishing. He's drawing people from all sides into his... the 25% of some of these rallies are Democrats that go out to see him.
Yeah.
Camp overnight in the sub-freezing temperatures.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It truly is. I mean, we've never seen anything like this. And that's why that side... By the way, Biden, as long as we're still talking about sort of the aftermath of the New Hampshire primary, did you know that Biden had some Kasich employees working on his campaign?
I know that Kasich is now a talking head on CNN.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a never-Trumper. He always was.
Yes.
He was for NAFTA. He was everything that had gone wrong was responsible
right.
for.
And he was also a hawk.
And a war hawk. Yeah. So, I mean, he was wrong on everything. Well, anyway, a couple of his staffers apparently had been trying to... They thought, in their infinite genius, that these never-Trumpers would have been effective in bringing Biden to the fore and to the nomination, which is apparently who they thought would be successfully the person who would defeat Trump.
Yeah, and you can't go back. Can anybody tell me what a lying dog-faced pony soldier actually is?
I've never heard of it, but it was an unusual extension of the language, wasn't it?
Yes.
How did those terms come together? Is that the way his mind thinks? Does that actually mean something to somebody?
Either that, or it's how his mind has stopped thinking.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't
But
work.
they came together.
Right.
He didn't have to come up with it.
Right, no, he just...
It was automatic.
Extemporaneous, yes.
Yeah. It really was interesting, wasn't it? But not that we're unused to seeing him in displays of peculiar examples of the language.
And whenever they brought up the problems with his son and Burisma oil, he just got angry. He never had an answer for it. He would just shout back at him. You don't have to vote for me. Don't vote for me. You're too old to vote for me. That was his responses.
Yeah, and of course the reason that he's even had to answer for it was because Trump won.
Yes.
Because the expectation was that Hillary would win.
Sure.
And none of this would have come to light. None of the coup d'etat, none of those elements, the Steele dossier, Hillary's emails, none of that would have been visible for anyone to see or to connect, were it not for the fact that Hillary couldn't pull out the victory.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a beautiful thing. People have no idea how important that was.
Yes.
It changed everything.
Yes, and the repercussions now have extended to trying to Attorney General Barr putting pressure on the prosecutors to lessen the sentencing recommendations for Roger Stone.
Well, there wasn't any crime there because there was
it was all a process crime.
It was all just Mueller's attempt to remove Trump, effectively. And so if there wasn't anything on Trump, then there wasn't anything on Stone. Mm-hmm. And Stone just stuck his neck out, and Weissman went after him.
Yeah, he claimed to have a connection with WikiLeaks, which he didn't have.
He's been a confidant of Donald Trump for many, many years, and he found himself swept up in that.
Right.
And that's all it is, And then Mueller fired off a call to CNN, and there was a media event while they stormed the jackbooted thugs stormed the estate of
at 3
of
in the
Roger
morning.
Stone at 6 in the morning or something.
And
Pulled him out of bed in his pajamas.
And he has a disabled Japanese wife, I think, or Oriental wife. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a disgrace. So for Barr to step up is an act of courage in this environment, and he'll be pardoned if
he is convicted.
If he ever goes to jail. Yeah.
Yeah, so now we have to untangle the Manafort mess because apparently that black ledger is once again, people are looking at that and thinking that was false. Manafort, was lobbying Yanukovych, and the Party of Regions was Yanukovych's party. Yanukovych was the premier or president of Ukraine that was overthrown in the Maidan coup. And the fact is that unlike what the Democrats would like you to think, he was actually lobbying Yanukovych to stay with the EU and not go to Russia. Mm-hmm. And that's all hidden away. And then this ledger that they supposedly found that survived a fire in the Party of Regions headquarters is being brought into question, too. And that's basically what they convicted him on as far as tax evasion, these supposed kickbacks or that he received. And that's all, dug up by the Chalupa sisters,
right?
Who we talked about on the show.
Who we didn't get to see in the impeachment trial.
No, we didn't get to see them at all.
Kind of hoping to see them.
Get out and do their coochie-coochie dance. So the whole thing was really just a circus. But now the Dems are trying to say, well, a jury convicted him and he should do the time. They're so serious. Nobody wants to lighten up at all about this whole thing, which is playing like a comic opera in front of our very eyes.
Yeah, it really is. Well, for those of us who understand it or choose to make it a point to understand it, I think.
And you brought up the point before the show that Eric Holder once called himself Obama's wingman.
Yeah. So can't Barr be Trump's wingman?
Yes.
Apparently not.
Yeah. Especially for something like this, and then there was something about the names of the candidates that you wanted to...
Yeah. Stop me if you missed this last night, but did you notice that CNN, and I usually go to CNN for results. I mentioned this, I think it was on last week's show. There's just something about that team that I think is right up to par on how they
can do math.
I guess that's it. Yeah, there's something professional about it. And did you notice how they pronounced Buttigieg's name?
No, I didn't. I didn't watch him that often.
No, for months, Trump and Paul Gajot and that black correspondent from Fox has been emphasizing by exaggeration how to pronounce his name because they were sick of hearing people mispronounce his name. It's Buttigieg.
Buttigieg.
And you put it together quickly, it's Buttigieg.
Right.
Well, guess what? As of last night on CNN, it was Buttigieg.
Okay.
And they all, to a person, began pronouncing it Buttigieg.
Well, what can you say about an electoral season when you have the chief whistleblower is the first three letters of his name are CIA.
Yeah, right.
And then we have the first openly gay candidate for president, and his name begins with BUTT.
Can't make it up.
The Butcher's Kitchen Barbecue invites your family in for the best wood-fire, slow-cooked barbecue rotisserie and open char.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ, a Lotus broadcast station. The power of radio since 1967.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
Here's a list of people who are Jewish, just like you and me. David Lee Roth lights the menorah. So do James Conn, Kirk Douglas, and the late Dinah Shore. Guess who eats together at the Carnegie Deli? Bowser from Sha-Na-Na and Arthur Fonzarelli. Paul Newman's half Jewish, Goldie Hawn's half too. Put them together, what a fine-looking Jew. You don't need Deck the Halls or Jingle Bell Rock, 'cause you can spin a dreidel with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, both Jewish. Put on your yarmulke, it's time for Hanukkah. The owner of the Seattle Supersonicas celebrates Hanukkah. O.J. Simpson, not a Jew.
Rod Carew.
Yeah. All right. So that was Adam Sandler, who I think is genuinely a nice guy. I haven't seen anything to say otherwise. And he is an independent thinking Jew. His latest film, by the way, I think it's called Uncut Diamonds or Uncut Stones, is about the Jewish gem industry in New York City. It's supposed to be a very realistic film. I'm going to have to check it out. But the point of playing that song, when he happily exposes all these people with Anglo names as being actually Jewish in Hollywood, is that, that's something that you normally cannot speak about. And maybe it's like black people can use the N-word and Adam Sandler can expose people for being Jewish. But in proportion to the population, if you say that black people commit the most violent crimes in America, that's an interesting social statistic. Nobody is going to call you a racist, I don't think, if you say that. But if you say that in proportion to their population, Jews commit the most white-collar crime, fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion, you name it, you're called an anti-Semite. What's the difference? Mm-hmm. So, and watching Tucker Carlson over the last month or so, we've seen that he has gone into exposing what he calls vulture capitalism. And during the media cover-up of the Epstein and Weinstein affairs, and also an expose he did on Paul Singer, a billionaire hedge fund private equity manager who buys up distressed corporations, slashes payroll, and increases debt, and then closes them and sells them off. And Tucker has exposed the effects that this has had on the heartland when he took down Cabela's from a rural area, causing unemployment and hardship. And he says the libertarians, and there's some truth to that, might say that this is simply creative destruction, capitalism renewing itself. But, there's a lot of truth that it's pure profiteering without regard for the lives of those that are displaced. But Tucker cannot do an Adam Sandler. When he has these people on his show, he cannot point out. He can only say that they are liberals. That as far as he can go. He walks right up to the line by even exposing this, but he can't come forward and say anything else.
Right.
He can't say that vulture capitalism is Jewish capitalism. But the names of the corporations that are vulture capitalists, they usually sound Anglo-Saxon waspish, but the names on the corporate boards are not. For example, Elliott Management has not only Paul Singer, but Zion Shohet, Jesse Cohn, Stephen Taub, Elliot Greenberg, Richard Zabel. Cerberus, another big one, has Stephen Feinberg, Lee Milstein, Jeffrey Lemansky, Seth Plattis, Joshua Weintraub, Daniel Wolf, David Teitelbaum. And then we had Baupost Group was in the news because of the app that failed or did exactly what it was supposed to do. Maybe it didn't fail in Iowa. And there we have Seth Klarman, Jordan Baruch, Isaac Auerbach, and you can go on and on. So when Tucker had his shows on how the executives of the other media corporations covered up for Weinstein and Epstein, I mean, I think Talking Truth to Power is going to have to start talking about how people have got to up their JDAR. You know, I mean, people.
J for Jewish.
Yeah, any website you go to, on the bottom underneath the stories, you know, you have those, pictures, and you can click on them and be taken to an entertainment site. They usually have one where guess which Hollywood celebrities are gay or lesbian. And, you know, so that's gaydar. And when I know people that claim they can pick out any gay person who's in the closet. But what we are asking the public to do, because, you know, it's very important. And we're not asking you to use your JDAR on your neighbors or your townspeople or anything like that. We're just talking about the 1%, or maybe it's the 1/2 of 1% that are in the public arena, that are doing things that affect you and your lives, or potentially affect you even more. For example, if they get a war against Iran, that could certainly drive up the cost of gasoline to exorbitant prices. So these things can affect you.
Christian, can you call security, alert security?
Yeah, because we might need security. So now, Mayor Pete, so we took a close look at Wall Street Pete, or hashtag Pete Cheat, to see just who met him in the infamous wine cellar fundraiser. Remember that? Mm-hmm. They tried to say that. And Mayor Pete defended his donors by saying, politics is defined not by who we reject, but how we bring everyone into the fold. Yes. Yeah.
Well, he's got 40 billionaires behind him, doesn't he?
Yes, yeah. He has quite a few. Mm-hmm. Yes, and
I was surprised to hear that. Frankly.
Yes, some of these are Jonathan Gray, Blackstone Group, married to Mindy Basser Gray, who is Jewish, and he does some good things, like he funds charter schools. But during the financial crisis, Blackstone brought up distressed properties and evicted thousands of people. Blackstone was named by the UN as predatory and a major contributor to the housing crisis. So does he take away homes from the poor, including the black poor, and then give some of the money back to, help poor people in charter schools?
Well, they have a history, do they not, of masking their own mischief with, public grace, so to speak.
Yes.
Financial grace, because they're able to wield it so publicly.
Another billionaire is Michael Sonnenfeld. He's an investment banker. Investment banks are always, they were picked out as the worst banks as far as contributing to statism, because they're the ones that fund governments, and by virtue of that, they're the ones that fund wars, basically. Mm-hmm. They handle most of the sovereign debt. But MUUS and Tiger 21 are his two fronts that he uses. He contributed $25,000 to the Democratic Majority for Israel, and he's on the board of the Center for New American Security, a think tank funded by Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, James Murdoch. Another donor to Mayor Pete is Marc Lasry. He was born in Marrakesh to a family of Moroccan Jews. He's a hedge fund billionaire. He was called Clinton's favorite fund manager. And he also invests in debt of distressed companies. He even took Trump Casino into bankruptcy in 2009.
Did he? Yeah.
And the progressives don't like him because he invests in non-progressive energy like fracking, contributed massively to Hillary.
He's a real maverick, isn't he?
Yeah, and got the National Enquirer to drop investigations of the Clintons.
No wonder.
And then Seth Klarman, of course, he's the founder of Shadow App.
The Shadow App, Iowa's counting failure.
Yes. And he also gave $1,500,000 to Paceonym, which is the super PAC for Acronym, and Acronym is the group that produced the Shadow App. So he owns $911 million in Puerto Rican debt.
Boy, oh boy. Huh?
Yes. And this is why they're called vulture capitalists. And this because he got Puerto Rico into debt, and then when Hurricane Maria came...
And they're on the receiving end of taxpayer money to build it back up. Yeah.
And Trump made an offhand comment that he should forgive the debt, but after he found out who owned it, I'm afraid he backtracked on that and said Puerto Rico has to pay off their own debt. And then there's the Levi-Strauss heiress, Mimi Hash. She gave $600,000 to Paceonym. Glenn Dubin, Castleton Commodities International Global Merchant Energy Company. So he retired because of investigations into his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. His father is Russian Jewish, mother Austrian Jewish. And there are more of them. And the point is that this is... Matt Taibbi once described Goldman Sachs as an octopus on the face of humanity, and that this global octopus is something that we're going to have to really start discussing if we're going to get anywhere in the future. And in order to do that...
That quote from Disraeli
yes.
should close the segment, if you can work that in there.
Benjamin Disraeli was the Prime Minister of England during Queen Victoria's reign most of the time, and I don't think we can get it in now.
It's too long, I suppose.
Yeah. But
try to fit it in.
The world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect.
This overload.
Shannon Lawson here. Join us for the Nevada Radio Roundup, Fridays at 2 p.m. A good news variety show all about the local scene. The Nevada Roundup, Friday at 2.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back to Talking Truth to Power, Nevada's Freedom Talk Radio. I'm your host, Brendan Traynor, and my co-host, Leland Faegre. And, the Pentagon now admits that over 100 soldiers were injured in the Iran missile strike. Mm-hmm. Their body count is spreading faster than the coronavirus is.
Yeah, and it's not funny.
No.
I don't know. I haven't had any detail out of how many or what kind of injuries we're talking about here. I understand that those kinds of concussion injuries don't manifest originally too prominently for people to notice. And
right.
But so what is the current status of those injuries, those brain injuries?
I don't know either. And some of it may not manifest itself for years, or they may be diagnosed as a simple concussion, and then later on you find out that it's more serious.
Well, these guys are just looking to get out of the theater. Sorry they signed up.
Yeah, MASH.
Yeah,
the MASH syndrome.
Yeah,
it's possible. Yeah. Because, like I said, they're hunkered down there, because of the Iraqi people don't want them there, and so I think I've heard a story that we have pulled some troops out of Iraq, although we're trying desperately to hang on to the
other than the ones that were injured. You mean?
Yeah, that we definitely want to hold on to the base that's right on the Syrian border, because that's our lifeline to protect the oil from ISIS.
Well, we don't want them to have it. That's for sure. I don't know what the answer to that is.
But. Yes. And I think, well, the danger there is that while we're protecting the oil, our troops are rubbing up against Russian troops without any real protocol there. Mm-hmm. And if that ever erupts into a firefight, then there could be a problem.
And I think there was something this morning. Did you hear about that?
No.
Yeah, there was shots fired this morning. It was just on my way in, so I don't have any specific information. But there was an incident this morning. There were no casualties, but shots were fired. So.
Yeah, and what's going on there now is that, Syria is trying to remove the last of the rebels from Idlib, which is a region that borders on the city of Aleppo, but mostly rural, and they've been liberating town after town. The main goal is to keep two major highways, M5 and M4. I'm not sure where M4 goes, but M5 is the highway directly from Damascus to Aleppo, which is a major artery that they would need to keep those two cities connected. And the bad player now is Erdogan and Turkey. Let's not forget that Turkey is now basically a Muslim Brotherhood country. That's what Erdogan wants.
And part of NATO.
Yeah. And over in Libya,
you just can't make it up.
I know. Over in Libya, the government that's officially recognized by the UN is also a Muslim Brotherhood government, but they only control the capital city of Tripoli and not much else. So there are insurgent forces led by someone named General Hastert. And for once, both the U.S. and Russia are backing Hastert to some degree because they don't like the Muslim Brotherhood being in charge over there. And but Russia has been trying to broker a ceasefire and a peace, although so far without all that much success. But the reason why that relates to Syria is because Erdogan is playing a double game, and he is claiming he was supposed to keep these roads open, but that was the Sochi agreements of a couple of years ago, where he was given a buffer zone.
Oh, that highway system thing, yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. He was supposed to create this buffer zone and keep the highway open, which he's utterly failed to do. But as part of that, he claims that he should have observation points. And these observation points have been supplying the rebels, al-Nusra, with supplies, food, medicine, and arms. So they're not much of an observation point. And let's not forget that Turkey actually created al-Nusra. Turkey was very much involved in the early years of the war in supporting the rebels, moderate or not. And their money caused al-Nusra to separate itself from al-Qaeda or whatever they do over there. But
whatever.
I know, because you can't follow.
I know.
How can you follow all this?
No, it's impossible.
No. So the Russian and the Syrian Arab Army forces have been preventing any new observation posts from being erected.
But something like this is happening.
Yes, yeah, I know. But somehow Erdogan is, while he's trying to supply these people, he's also enticing them to move to Libya and join the forces supporting the Muslim Brotherhood government there.
I'm telling you, did we muck up that region?
I know. I know we did.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was bad enough before.
Yeah, and there's a clip of Bernie Sanders in 1981 saying that 2001, saying if we invaded Iraq, it would create chaos in the region.
Yeah, right.
So Bernie, one thing about Bernie, why did the anti-war people always have to be such Marxists or such, progressives? But,
yeah, they give us a bad name, don't they?
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's what's going on in Syria, and so Turkey is being a totally bad partner. I mean, Putin is going to have to call him and give him a stern lecture, because if he goes much further over there, I mean, Putin's going to have to attack the Turkish forces. But right now, they've been kept at bay so far. The Syrian Arab Army is making headways. They're capturing these small towns and driving out ISIS. But where are they going to go after they're driven out of there? They've got nowhere really to go except maybe the Ukraine. We know some of them went to Ukraine, Chechnya, to bother the Russians. That's the reason why the Russians got involved, to keep a pipeline, prevent a pipeline from Chechnya in their country to Syria of all these jihadis.
Well, we never looked at those refugees as being lucky when we saw them fleeing, but boy, were they lucky. Huh?
Yeah.
Gosh.
And there's also 5,000 Uyghurs. Turkey, for a while, was smuggling Uyghurs in because the Uyghurs in that Xinjiang province of China, they're Turkmen, basically. They're Muslims, but they're, the Turkmen go all up through that area of Central Eurasia. So that if Erdogan wants, to be the Sultan of the new caliphate.
Well, isn't that what he wants to be?
Yeah.
That is what he wants to
do. And that's where a lot of his caliphate would come through. Like, for example, Kazakhstan is basically a pro-Russian country. It's the thinnest populated country in the world. I think there's only like 5 or 6 people per square acre, or however they figure it out over there. But it's rich in mineral resources. And the capital, Almaty, is it's a pretty interesting place to visit. I've seen pictures of it, but it's also Turkmen, and then so are the Khazars. As a matter of fact, if you get right down to it, the Ashkenazi Jews were originally Turkmen that migrated way back in the 4th century out of Turkey into that area of the Russian steppes there. So the beat goes on. That's all I can say. I mean, we're not being helpful. It's that Geico commercial where the guy's trying to call his mother is trying to call the insurance company to get him out to the scene of the accident. She can't get through. The line is busy. And he's saying, "You're not being helpful." Well, Erdogan is not being helpful over there. He's a real SOB, to put it lightly.
What a partner, huh?
Yeah. But we just have to think that it is going to work itself out, that the odds are that that Syria will eventually be, hopefully, a united country, and then they can deal with Assad. I mean, if elections were held right now, I think Assad would probably win overwhelmingly. Anytime somebody gets you through
Stability.
A war.
Yeah, they just want...
I mean, the Russians love Stalin. Despite the gulags and everything else, they still love him because he got them through the Great Patriotic War. Mm-hmm. So whenever that happens...
That's why they love Bernie.
Yeah.
It's the same Stalin-esque affection.
Yeah. But he's accused of being a Trotskyite. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't, when these leftists get talking Marxist
there's
ideology.
There's a hyphen in there somewhere.
Yeah, you can't figure out what's going on. I mean, it's like the middle-aged theologians debating over how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's like the same thing when they get into this Marxist-Leninist debates, and that's the milieu that Bernie comes from. The Brooklyn Jewish Marxist milieu is exactly where he came from. Yep. So he's full of theory. I mean, but as far as reality goes, except for his anti-war stand makes sense, but as far as economic realities go, he just can't do the math.
And the math is that 89% of New Hampshire voters were over the age of 30 that voted for him. That's stunning. We mentioned that earlier in the show.
I think we did, but yeah.
I can't get over that, that it wasn't the youth that put Bernie on top last night. He lost, 20% of the percentage of votes that he got against Hillary in 2016.
Okay.
So, are we going to have a Sinn Féin-led coalition in Ireland?
Yes, it looks that way. We'll talk about it after the break.
Boy, we're going to have to talk about that next week. We're out of time.
Oh, we are?
Yeah.
Oh, time flew fast. I didn't realize it was
always
the last
does.
segment.